Okay, hi guys. Sorry for the get off style video, but I just watched this BBC report about 20 minutes ago, and I thought I'd pause it and play it for you guys and run you through the despicable display of propaganda that the BBC are passing off as news. Now, this is of course about the royal birth, and here we're going to look at how the BBC treats the alternative voice. So there's a chap on here who's explaining how, well, he's criticising the way the BBC are being just completely subservient to the royal family, and you'll see for yourself.
Has it all been too much? How reasonable has all this intense media coverage been? With us to discuss this, Graham Smith, you saw him in the report there from the Anti-Monarchy Pressure Republic, and Rita Clifton, who's an expert on brands. Good morning to you both. Well, if you're not a royalist, it is all too much. But the presence, Graham, of media outlets from all over the world fixated on the Lindo wing of St Mary's Hospital this week shows surely that there is some media justification to it. It's not just the British media, it's everybody's interested.
Well, the media has a habit on lots of stories of chasing its own tail, going around in the pack and just sort of wanting to be there because everyone else is there. So it doesn't necessarily...
If I might interrupt, it wouldn't be a news item in Australia. It wouldn't, they covered it in Australia. We saw the clip there.
Of course, it's a celebrity story. It has some interest, but that doesn't mean that it justifies the sort of overwhelming saturation coverage, and particularly with broadcasters in Britain who have a duty, a legal and ethical obligation to be balanced, impartial and proportionate in their coverage, and that hasn't happened at all. All the broadcasters, not just the BBC, have been joining in the celebration and actually trying to suggest that the whole country is celebrating when most people are just getting on with their lives, not paying attention.
What would have been balanced coverage for you then? What is the other side
well,
of this?
The not standing outside the hospital on Monday speculating about a young woman's pregnancy, how long she's been in labour, when the conception was, and all this kind of stuff, which is rather intrusive anyway, but it is not news. When the baby was born, of course report it, because there is a constituency out there that's interested, but also reflect on the fact that the monarchy is a political institution, and they want to see this kind of coverage because it helps support their brand and their position, and defend their interests. So,
I'll just pause it here. Notice they said their brand. Pay attention to what happens in a second.
Broadcasting, you've got an obligation to actually scrutinise that and challenge why they want to see this kind of PR.
It's not just broadcasters. I mean, if you want to take that argument, you need to have it with all the newspapers except for one of them this morning. Because
we have a free press. The press are allowed to say what they like.
Well, I mean, but if you're arguing that it shouldn't be on the, it's on the front page of all the newspapers as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, presumably, to look at the other side of the coin, that's good for brand. Is it good for brand Britain if that is the case?
Okay, he never mentioned brand Britain. He was talking about the monarchy as a brand. Here we have a BBC supposed journalist twisting his words, twisting what he said to make it sound like all this media rolling news of the birth and the labour, what have you, is for the benefit of the country. This is another great example of a mainstream media journalist twisting the words of the counter or the alternative voice.
It's extremely good for brand Britain. I mean, the media will go where the money is, not surprisingly. And the royal family is one of the most valuable brands that we've got in the UK. And the royal baby is really the icing on brand Britain and what's been an extraordinary year for brand Britain over the past year. And the royal family does bring an extraordinary amount of income to the UK, and also it's very good for our long-term economic value as well.
Can you put a figure on it, roughly?
Well, if we look at a couple of things, say for example, on the royal family itself, something between 70 and 80% of the UK support having the royal family. Only a minority are against it.
That's not an economic benefit.
If you think about just how much it costs us to have the royal family, say between 200 and 250 million, that's only £1 or so per person per year. If you then think about the economic benefits, so a couple of £1 billion a year of income as a result of
having a royal family. Where does this figure come from? The Financial Times has already debunked all this. There isn't a shred of evidence to support the idea that the British economy benefits from the monarchy.
Can I inject this point here? The Centre for Retail Research based in Nottingham Retail sales could see an increase of £243 million in
which has
July.
been completely
August from
debunked by the Financial Times. It's not the case that I mean, a lot of that retail is imports, money going out of the country. B is such a small figure, it's something like 0.02% of GDP, which would just get completely absorbed into the usual fluctuations of the economy. It's just not any economic benefit. Now, the 200 and something million pounds that it costs for the monarchy every year, that's not a pound a person, that's thousands of nurses, doctors, teachers, schools. You know, that's money that we could be spending on those public services which are currently being cut and frozen and you know, jobs lost.
However, what you would say is that if we're not getting this money into the UK, if we don't have successful businesses, some which are actually based on tourism and the royal family, if we don't get that kind of income, we're not going to have the money to pay for civil society. So we need successful businesses, we need successful brands, we need that kind of reliability of earnings in the future. Otherwise, we won't have that money to pay.
The monarchy does not bring in tourists. Now, this is a point that's been made many times, and I've actually sat down with Visit Britain, the heads of Visit Britain, and I said to them, if we get rid of the monarchy, there's no evidence that if we got rid of the monarchy, tourism would suffer, and they said, we agree with you.
Would you agree that there is a feel-good factor of some sort? Some would say a very big feel-good factor from events like this,
well,
which is worth something.
There's a feel-good factor amongst people that feel good about it, but I mean, there's most people.
But lots of people do.
Most people in this country, according to the polls, are not that interested in. I mean, they support the retention of the monarchy. They're not interested in these stories. They weren't that interested in the Jubilee or the wedding either. But that diversity of opinion is not just about Republicans versus monarchists. It's the big chunk of people in the middle that have very diverse, different attitudes and opinions, and that gets completely swamped and obliterated by the saturation coverage.
It'll be interesting to see, won't it? Because a lot of those editions of newspapers are sort of souvenir editions, so it'll be interesting to see perhaps tomorrow if it affected figures like Graham Smith or Rita Clifton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. You'll have some thoughts on that, no doubt. Do get in touch this morning. It's just gone 7:45. This is breakfast. These are the main stories this morning. There's a warning from a group of MPs that.
Okay, just to further hammer on the point.
And coming up on the programme, we'll be on board.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have spent their first night at home with their new son. The couple are still working on a name for the...
Still working on a name. Now, that's what they said word for word last night. There we have a BBC journalist repeating word for word the royals said.
First night at home with their new son. The couple are still working on a name for the prince.
Still working on a name. So there you have it, folks. You have the BBC parroting exactly what the royals want them to say. We've had this rolling news round the clock for days now. If there was any integrity in the BBC, if these guys were genuine journalists, they would be asking the tough questions about the Nazi connections, the global crime enterprise that the monarchy at the centre of. Questions about Diana and the inquest into Diana's death. I mean, this monarchy is just a criminal enterprise. I can feel a rant coming on, and I don't do ranty stuff. So before I get angry, do your own research. It's all out there if you're willing to look for it. So use the internet and find the information. It's out there for free. That's all. I'm signing off for Info Alternative News, and yeah.